Okay, so today we will be seeing chapter 21 of Canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the chapter 21 is going to discuss about the conversation that happened between Manu and Kardama Muni. The Manu here we are discussing is Swayambhu Manu. So this whole chapter is going to be mainly a discussion between Kardama Muni and Swayambhu Manu, but we will also be seeing the conversation between the Supreme Lord and Kardama Muni. So both will be seeing. So just to keep things put in the perspective, we had seen an overall Canto overview a very long back, maybe 20 plus weeks back. We are currently in the section 4 of the Canto 3. We have finished the major portion which deals with creation and secondary creation. We just completed secondary creation last week, and from here we are completely starting a new section. So today is the section from we are starting about the dynasty of Swayambhu Manu from this chapter. So it's from this chapter till the end of this canto we will be discussing the life and times of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, and their son Kapiladev, who's an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, and his teachings to Devahuti will be discussed in section 5. And since we have given a recap a lot for so many weeks, I'm not going in detail. Vidura and Uddhava meet in the first 4 chapters and speak a lot about Krishna. And then Vidura gets redirected to Maitreya by Uddhava. So he goes and meets Maitreya Rishi and he asks a lot of questions. The main crux of the questions are about the creation and the secondary creation of the universe. In the course of discussing the creation and secondary creation, a lot of other things are also discussed, specifically the pastime of Jaya and Vijaya being cursed and how they take birth as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And the battle between Varahadev and Hiranyaksha is also discussed in that connection. After that, secondary creation is discussed that we saw last week. And now the whole, at least in this canto, predominantly the section of creation and secondary creation is over. Now we will be seeing mostly the life of Kardama Muni and Devahuti from beginning with chapter 21. So after hearing about secondary creation from chapter 10, chapter 12, and again in chapter 20, Vidura changes his inquiries. He is now inquiring about the dynasty of Swayambhu Manu. So this particular chapter 21, which is a conversation between Manu and Kardama Muni. However, we also have a good conversation between Kardama Muni and the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So here in this particular chapter, there are 56 verses, and mainly Shaunak Rishi asks questions, which is, I'm sorry, it's not Shaunak Rishi, it is Vidura asking questions. Vidura asks questions, and then he asks about Kardamuni gets the darshan of the Lord. I think I missed this slide. I made a mistake. Kardamuni prays to the Supreme Lord, and then the Lord speaks to Kardama, and then there is a description of the Bindu Sarovar, and Kardama receives Manu. So we will go ahead and see that. So the first 5 verses are going to describe Vidura's inquiries about the dynasty of Swayambhu Manu. So now, just to put things in perspective, like here, Vidura has already taken Vanaprastha. He has come out of home. He belongs to a royal family, and he has seen enough of royalties. He knows, and he himself belongs to a royal family. So all these stories about asking about other royals, and he's all tired of all those things. That's why he says, even I don't want to hear about Mahabharata. Please describe me more the glories of the Lord in another place. So, but here he is again asking Maitreya Rishi to describe the dynasty of Swayambhu Manu. So we will see the reason also later. So the first question he asks is, please describe the dynasty of Swayambhu Manu, because he is the one who actually started the procreation. And specifically, he knew already who are the daughters and the sons of Swayambhu Manu, because Maitreya Rishi had explained in the previous chapters. So here he says, Vidura is asking Maitreya Rishi, how did Priyavrat Maharaj and Uttanapath, they both protect the earth, the planet, how did they rule? And please also describe about Manu's famous daughter Devahuti. Devahuti was already very, very famous. We will see in the next chapters how famous she was even among the heavenly denizens. So she, and he also knew that she got married to Kardama. And how many offsprings did they get, that the great yogi Kardama Muni begot through her? So these things look like, sound like a very mundane subject matter. Like, oh, they both married, how many children they did have. It seems like general people also speak these kind of things. Sounds like an usual prajalpa of to normal people. But here, Maitreya Rishi is very highly advanced. And again, Vidura is also very highly advanced spiritually. Still, why are they discussing about that? What's the speciality of the offsprings? And also, the Shaunaka Rishis have told in the past many times to Sutta Goswami, even while discussing about Parikshit Maharaj, please describe about the life of Parikshit Maharaj. Yadi Krishna means if it has some connection to Krishna's katha, if it has some relationship with Krishna. And here Vidura is asking, so that means there must be some connection with the Supreme Lord. So we'll see that. How did Ruchi and Daksha, the other daughter of uh, Manu, generate children after marrying the other daughters of Swayambhu Manu, Akuti and Prasuti? Ruchi was married to Akuti and Daksha was married to Prasuti. So this is the first five verses we saw. In the first five verses, we saw the inquiry of Vidura about Swayambhu Manu's dynasty. Now, because he specifically mentioned about, please describe about Manu's famous daughter Devahuti, Maitreya actually chooses to speak about the descendants of Devahuti and Kardama first. Even though he asked about Priyavrata, Uttanapath, Ruchi, and Daksha, and also about Devahuti, he chooses to speak about the descendants of Devahuti and Kardama Muni. So here we are in the next section of verses 6 to 12. In these seven verses, Kardama Muni actually, Maitreya is explaining a scene. He is explaining a scenario where Kardama Muni has been practicing or performing austerities, and the Supreme Lord has become very pleased with his austerities, and then he appears before Kardama Muni. So that is the section we are going to describe, and this section also describes the form of the Supreme Lord in a very beautiful way. So the first three verses explains how Kardama performed austerities. And why did he perform austerities? It is quite like interesting to see. Brahmaji actually orders Kardama Muni to create progeny. That means he needs to increase the population. And to do that task, Kardama Muni goes and performs austerity for 10,000 years. Means, so 10,000 years he took to perform austerity just to create progeny, because in this world we think creating progeny does not need any austerity. That's like any common person can just casually do it. But here, for the same act of creating progeny, Kardama Muni is performing austerities for 10,000 years. And that's a lot of time. And Brahmaji has asked him to like immediately create progeny. So, however, in the mode of goodness, this is how people are. They're doing it in the right way and executing austerities. Everything emanates from the purification comes through the austerity, and then whatever they are doing, then that's going to have a good effect on the world and for in their own spiritual lives. So here Kardama sets a great example of performing 10,000 years of austerities just to create progeny. And Kardama executed in the process of his austerities, he is engaging in various types of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, that the Lord becomes very, very pleased, because he was worshipping the Lord in trance. And the Lord becomes completely pleased, and then he shows his personal spiritual form, which actually can only be understood through the sound vibration in general. Generally, we can understand the Supreme Lord through the sound vibrations. Shrutek Shitapato, or means we see through the ears. But here, the same Supreme Lord, who is only generally understood by hearing, actually becomes personally manifested before Kardamamani. That's why he said that personality who is generally understood only through the Vedas, through the sound vibration of the Vedic scriptures, is personally appearing. And what is the reason? Because he is extremely pleased with Kardamamani. That is the only qualification. And so now the Supreme Lord is appearing before Kardamamani. So now here there is a description. Maitreya Rishi is giving a description of how the Supreme Lord looked in to Vidura. So here he is explaining the darshan of the Supreme Lord as seen by Kardama. Kardama saw the Lord, and he was effulgent like the sun, and he was garlanded with white lotuses and water lilies, and he wore yellow silk garments, which is generally called pita ambara. Ambara is cloth, pita is yellow. So yellow silken garments, and lotus face surrounded by dark locks of hairs and adorned with a crown and earrings. He was holding Shanka, Chakra, Gada, and white lily, and having a smiling glance captivating devotees. So, this is also a famous verse Kiritinam Kundalinam Shanka Chakra Gadadharam Shvetotpala Kridanankam Manasparsha Smitekshanam. Manasparsha. His smile can actually touch the minds of the conditioned souls. It can actually attract the minds of the conditioned souls, the heart of the conditioned souls. That is how beautiful his smile was. Manas Parshas Mitekshanam, and his smiling glance. He was smiling and he was glancing at Kardama Muni, and that smiling glance was actually Manas Parsha. It could touch the hearts, and that's that's a great thing. If Krishna's smile, Vishnu's smile can touch our hearts, then we will not be attracted by other things. So it is an important aspect of deity worship. Also, taking darshan of the deities is one thing that the deities are actually looking at us. At the same time, when we are taking when from our side, when we are praying and when we are taking darshan, we gradually take from the lotus feet to the lotus face of the Supreme Lord, and the smile which Kapil Deva also will later explain in the third canto, when he is speaking to Mother Devahuti, that like that smile of the Supreme Lord actually dries the ocean of miseries, oceans of sorrow that the conditioned soul has. So here the smile of the Supreme Lord, the smiling glance of the Supreme Lord is called as Manasparsha, that which touches the heart, captivates the heart of the devotees. And he has a crown, earrings, and he also has Shanka, Chakra, Gada, and a flower, lotus flower or a white lily. And he is also endowed with Srivatsas and Kaustubha manis, and actually his lotus feet placed on the shoulders of Garuda. He was actually coming in the Garuda we saw in the previous picture. Vinyasta charanam bhojam amsha deshe garutmatah drishtva ke avashitam vaksha shriyam kaustuva kandharam. So now, seeing the Supreme Lord in this way, that he is arriving, Kardama could see that the Supreme Lord is arriving on the back of Garuda. So Kardama's reaction, seeing that, how did Kardama feel? Because this is a third person account that Maitreya is explaining. So Maitreya is explaining what was the reaction of Kardama. That Kardama became so joyful on having his desires finally fulfilled, because of the results of the austerity that he was performing was not to just get something from Krishna, he also wanted to have the darshan of Krishna. So with natural love, he offered obeisances and he was offering prayers. So now, after being pleased with the austerities of Kardama Muni, the Supreme Lord Vishnu, here he is appearing. He is appearing before Kardama Muni on the banks of on the back of carried by the shoulders of Garuda. So how is he praying? What are his prayers? So this is how Kardama Muni is praying to the Supreme Lord, that he says, I have achieved the perfections of my eyes. So he says, my eyes have become successful because I have seen the ultimate object of anyone's vision. and you're the reservoir of all existence. And he's saying advanced yogi practicing yoga for many births, they also aspire to see your form. They have to perform for, they have to many births, they will be performing austerities and practicing yoga, and through that austerity, when their heart is cleansed and you are pleased, only then they can see your form. And he says, but people who are less intelligent, they actually ask for material desires. They don't ask for seeing you. Your lotus feet can take one across the ocean of mundaneness shines. It can actually help a person cross over the Samarshitaye Padapallava Plavam Mahatpadam Punya Yasho Murare. So that lotus feet which can actually help us cross the material ocean, that is your actually your lotus feet. However, less intelligent people actually worship these lotus feet of yours to achieve cheap material things. But he says, you're so kind, my dear Lord, that you bestow your mercy even upon them. Yema yayate hatamedasastvat padaravindam bhavasindupotam upasate kamalavaya sham rashi shakaman niraye apiyesyu. He says that material desires that people pray to you, that's even available in the hellish planets. Rashi shakama niraye. Niraye is hellish planet. Even there is some material enjoyment. So what to speak of asking you from you for some material enjoyment? That's actually less intelligent. So somebody may be asking, so then why don't you worship me without material desires? The Supreme Lord may ask, because in the next verse he'll be saying, I am calling them less intelligent, but I am also like them. Though I criticize such people, I also have worshipped you, who are desiratory, desiring to marry a girl of a like-minded girl, who can fulfill all desires in married life. Because why? Brahmaji has ordered me actually to create progeny. So in order to create progeny, I need a suitable wife. So he says, please. That is why, that is all. Also have the desire. I'm not saying I'm completely not having any desire. Still, I understand that is very less intelligent to ask you for that. But that's my service that Brahmaji has asked me to give. So that's when if Vishnu says, oh, you're calling all those people less intelligent who have material desires, and then why don't you worship me without material desires? Why are you asking? So then he is that for that Kardama Muni is explaining, actually I am bound by the instructions of Brahma. What is the instructions of Brahma? Instructions of Brahma to Kardama Muni is to actually create more progeny to populate this universe. So here he says that I am bound by the instruction of Brahma, which are in turn actually coming from your direction. You told Brahma and Brahma has told me. So indirectly it is your instruction to create progeny. So you are the master of all, even Lord Brahma. So it is ultimately under your direction, including everyone, including me. We are all bound by, as if a bull is bound by a rope around a grinding mortar. Similarly, we are all bound by a rope and engaged in satisfying their desires. So in this way, he says the surrendered souls will be liberated. Anyone who actually surrenders to the instructions of the Supreme Lord, even though they may have to engage in this world, they will be ultimately liberated. Persons who have given up stereotyped worldly affairs and the beastly followers of these affairs and have taken shelter of your lotus feet by discussing Krishna Katha, which is sweet. Piyusha is nectar. Actually, another meaning of Piyusha is also nectar, and intoxicating Sidhu will be freed from all bodily afflictions. So one may be having various kinds of bodily necessities and other things, but still all those things can be overcome by the taste that one develops in hearing about Krishna. Lokam shalokанугатан pashumscha hitva shritaste charanat patram parasparam tvad sidhu piyusha niryapita deha dharma. So parasparam tvad gunavada sidhu. How do we how does generally devotees protect themselves from the influence of material energy? So the crux is given in this particular verse. Prabhupada explains in many other places also. This is the main secret in protecting oneself from the influences of the material energy is to actually this third line of this verse. Parasparam tvat gunavada sidu. So parasparam, first of all, one has to engage in discussing Krishna Katha in the association of other devotees. So by engaging in that, there is a protection that one develops in the heart against the sense gratificatory desires. When that particular association is deep and trusting and nourishing devotionally also. So devotionally and emotionally, when it is when we belong to the association of devotees and we hear and exchange our hearts, and in that way when we develop some taste for Krishna Katha, Piyusha Nirya Pita Deha Dharma, that is the only way one can go above the bodily afflictions, Deha Dharma. One can rise above the Deha Dharma and the bodily afflictions only through engaging in the pastimes, engaging in discussing the Krishna Katha in the association of devotees. And when someone engages like this, then the time does not affect the devotees. That means generally the lifespan of the whole universe is cut by the time factor. However, that means what? Time is cut by means it's not just spent, it is uselessly spent when somebody is not engaging in a devotional service. Everybody spends the time, even devotees spend. But why is it said it's cut short? Because it's spent uselessly. However, the time does not affect the devotees in the sense time which actually keeps us in illusion, changes our body, changes shifts us from one body to another body. That it cannot have that effect on the devotees because they will transcend the three modes and the time influence at the time of the death by by transferring themselves to the spiritual world. So in that way, time loses its control on devotees who discuss Krishna Katha. So here, now that Kardama Muni is continuing to speak to the Supreme Lord, he has been praying to the Supreme Lord so far from verses of for in all these verses, and here we will see the Lord is going to speak to Kardama Muni. Sorry, there's something. Okay, I think I have missed the slide before 19 to 22. I can just explain. In the 19th verse, Kardama Muni explains how the Supreme Lord is the maintainer, creator, and the destroyer. I might have shuffled the verses. Just a minute. No, I think I missed making it. So, how the Supreme Lord is the creator, maintainer, and destroyer of these universes through his Yogamaya. Like how a spider, the analogy of spider is given very often to compare to the Supreme Lord, that how the spider actually creates, maintains, and destroys its cobweb. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, with by his own Yogamaya energy, by his own personal energy, he can create, maintain, and destroy everything. And although it is not his desire, it is not that he wants to, so he creates, it is he manifests the creation for the sensual satisfaction of the living entities. Let me check. I remember making this slide. How is it missing? Hmm, that's interesting. What did I do? So, because although it is not his desire, it is not the Supreme Lord's desire that the material universe is created. Rather, it is the living entities want to enjoy their sensual desire satisfaction. For their sensual satisfaction, the universe is created. And let your causeless mercy be upon us. He is praying that please, please have your causeless mercy on us, for you have appeared with your eternal form, your personal form. Here we see the Mayavadi philosophy that Brahman assumes a temporary material form when even Krishna comes or Lord Ram comes. No, here Kardamani is Bhagavatam is very clearly saying, you have come in your own eternal form. with shining uh, jewelry and wearing tulsi leaves and all these ornaments. So he's glorifying the personal form of the Supreme Lord as spiritual form. And he offers his obeisances. And he says, your lotus feet is the only shelter which is worthy of taking shelter of. And he says, as you shower your benedictions on this insignificant person, give me that benediction by which I can actually develop detachment to all material things. And in that way, by being detached from all material things, I can also realize you. Because this whole material universe is your creation. If you give your mercy, then this material world cannot bewilder me. His Holiness Sachinandan Maharaj gives this amazing story that how when he goes to deliver a newspaper, a dog actually comes behind him to bite him. But as soon as the owner calls for the dog to stop, then it stops. So it doesn't attack him. So similarly here, Kardamani is saying the external energy of this material world cannot bewilder me if you give me your mercy. By your mercy, if I become detached from all these material things, then I will not be bewildered by this external energy. So please be causelessly merciful unto me. And he says, thus, as he is addressing very sincerely, the Lord was looking at the sage with a smiling face, and he starts speaking. And what he says, what the Supreme Lord Vishnu says to Kardamani is what we are going to see from verses 23 to 32. So, in the first few verses, like the 7 verses 23 to 29, the Lord actually fulfills the desire of Kardama for a suitable wife. Basically, he gives the benediction. Yes, I know what you're asking for. So, Tatastu, please have it. He says, knowing the heart desire of your heart, I have already arranged for that. You don't even have to ask me. I already knew what is in your heart when you're performing this austerity. Apart from pleasing me, what else you needed? So Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. So here he is engaging in Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. With love, he is engaging in devotional service. So Krishna is taking care. Yoga Kshemam Vahameham. So he says, I have already granted the desire, knowing your heart. And the desires of people like you who serve me in devotion are never frustrated. Here we cannot say, oh, I also worship in devotion, so all the desires I have should never be frustrated. The desire also to some level should be connected to, should be genuine. And here again, the Supreme Lord is saying, actually, Swayambhu Manu, he is a great personality. Why we may think suddenly, why is he glorifying Swayambhu Manu? He has appeared before Kardama, and suddenly he glorifies Swayambhu Manu. He says Swayambhu Manu, he is actually ruling the earth with its 7 oceans, and he is well known for all his righteous acts, and he's a great personality. So Kardam Muni must be thinking, so what? Like, what about him? So he's going to come day after tomorrow here to meet you with his queen, Shatarupa, to see you. He says, why does Swayambhu Manu with his queen, who's the ruler of the whole Brahmavarta, that he will come here to see me? He has actually a grown up, marriageable, beautiful, and qualified daughter, Devahuti. He will bring, Swayambhu Manu and Shatarupa will bring her, their daughter, to actually offer you to you as a suitable bride. So she will just the type that you have been thinking of in your heart for all these long years. So she will soon be yours and will serve you to your heart's content. So here Vishnu has already arranged all these things. So he's predicting that day after tomorrow, Swayambhu Manu will come and offer you his daughter. So don't worry, it's already been arranged. So now, so she will bring forth 9 daughters from you, and through them the sages will duly beget children. So it's quite interesting that Brahmaji ordered Kardama Muni to go and expand the population. So he performs 10,000 years austerities and then marries the daughter of Swayambhu Manu and only gives birth to 9 daughters. He doesn't create thousands and thousands. He just gives birth to 9 daughters. But these 9 daughters marry different sages and actually propagate a lot. So even though immediately his austerities actually has a long lasting effect, he himself produces only 9 daughters. And his son Kapil Dev actually does not produce any progeny. So here The Supreme Lord is saying, you will attain me with your heart cleansed by carrying out my instructions. After you beget your 9 daughters, you will come back to me. And he says, showing compassion to all and giving fearlessness to all, you will perceive yourself and the universe is in me and myself in you. He says, you will understand the presence of the Supreme Lord everywhere, oneness and simultaneous difference. Achintya, Beda, Abeda. So, like how in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 4, Krishna says, Maya datam idam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matstani sarva bhutani nachaham teshu avastita. He says, I am everywhere and still I am aloof from everything. Everything rests in me, still I am separate from them. So, here also something very similar, Vishnu is saying, you will see yourself and the universe is in me, that everything is situated in Mahavishnu. And you will see myself in you, and in the form of Paramatma, you will also see me present in your heart. So, in this way, he says, I shall manifest my own plenary portion, Kapila Dev, through Devahuti, and along with your 9 daughters, and I shall instruct her in the system of philosophy that deals with the ultimate principles or categories, Tattva Samhita. That is, he explains the Sankhya Yoga system to Devahuti. So he says all these things. You will have 9 daughters. You will come back to me. You will have an amazing spiritual advancement, and you will also have a son in the myself, my own plenary portion as your son through Devahuti, and he will teach. He will propagate the Sankhya Yoga system through his mother, first teaching her. So in this way, he gives what's going to happen in the future. So everything he is giving. And then after giving all these hints about what's going to happen in the future, so now the Lord, Supreme Lord, actually departs. So the Lord who reveals himself only when the senses are in Krishna consciousness. Pratyak Akshaja. Actually, the Lord is called as Adokshaja. We might all have heard this name many times. Adokshaja. Akshaja means Aksha is eyes, Ja is something which is born from eyes. The knowledge which is born from eyes. The knowledge which is born from eyes is form. Similarly, there are various other senses. So the Acharyas explain how Aksha is one sense, but here it represents all the knowledge gathering senses. The other knowledge gathering senses are nose, tongue, skin, and ears. So that all these senses are represented by Aksha, because generally people think seeing is believing. So that's why he's saying Akshaja, the knowledge which is born from Aksha, he is called as Adokshaja, one who defeats it. One who defeats the knowledge which is born from through the senses. So this famous verse is also there. Krishna cannot be experienced through our sense perceptions. He has to reveal himself. I'm just not getting the verse. Like, so Swayam eva spuratyadaha. So he has to be person. He has to reveal himself, and that service begins with the tongue. So here he is called as Pratyagakshaja. He is personally manifested when the same senses which cannot actually see the Supreme Lord, which whose knowledge gets defeated by the Supreme Lord, and that's why the Supreme Lord is called as Adokshaja, becomes Pratyagakshaja. The same Supreme Lord who is Adokshaja becomes Pratyagakshaja when the same senses are situated in Krishna consciousness, when the same senses are engaged in the activities of devotional service, when the same senses are purified by the execution of devotional service using those senses. So the same senses, the material senses, can be spiritualized by engaging in Krishna consciousness, and in that state of consciousness, one's senses can actually perceive the Supreme Lord, even though it is we are while living. So that's why the Supreme Lord is here called as Pratyagakshaja, because he actually revealed himself to Kardama Muni because his senses was fully purified by engaging in Krishna consciousness. So after speaking all these things to Kardama Muni about the future, the Supreme Lord Vishnu departs from the place called as Bindu Sarovar, where Kardama Muni was performing austerities. So this is a lake which is encircled, adjoining, encircled by river Saraswati, and this is where Kardama Muni was actually performing his pastimes. Kardamuni was performing his austerities. So the Lord appeared there, spoke to him, and then now disappeared. So the sage actually witnessed the Lord going through the pathway leading to Vaikuntha. He saw when the Lord was coming on the shoulders of Garuda, and now he saw the Lord going back. And listen, the hymns forming the basis of Samaveda vibrated by the flapping wings of Garuda. There, there is another place in the third canto also which says how the flapping of the wings of Garuda actually produces the Vedic vibrations, Samaveda. So the Kardama Muni actually now knows what's going to happen in the future. So he's not restless, he is not checking for notifications, he's peacefully continuing his meditation, waiting for the arrival of Manu, and he continued staying on the banks of Bindu Sarovar. And as told by the Supreme Lord, Swayambhu Manu, along with his wife and daughter and his party, he arrives at the hermitage of Kardama Muni on the predicted day, as predicted by the Supreme Lord. So here the description of Bindu Sarovar is given. Earlier, the description of Bindu Sarovar is not given. Now, because Swayambhu Manu is coming into this scenario, we are seeing the Bindu Sarovar through the eyes of the new parties who are entering the scene scenario. So, this Bindu Sarovar is also very, very special. Why Bindu Sarovar's description was not given earlier when the Supreme Lord was appearing? Because the Supreme Lord was personally appearing in this place. So, it must be so great, and that time there was no description of Bindu Sarovar. Now that the Supreme Lord has left and Swayambhu Manu is coming, why is the description of Bindu Sarovar being described? Because Kardama Muni has been performing the austerities on the banks of this Bindu Sarovar from a long time. So when Kardama Muni's austerities were being described, when the Supreme Lord is appearing, that time the description of Bindu Sarovar should be given. In such and such place, which is so beautiful, which is so congenial for practicing spiritual life. That is where Kardama Muni was practicing his austerities. It could have been introduced like that. So now we will see why it is being introduced later, the reason for it being introduced later. So verses 38 to 44 describe the Bindu Sarovar, which is the lake on its banks that Kardama Muni is performing austerities. So here the Bindu Sarovar, why is it called so? Bindu means a drop. So when the Supreme Lord was actually giving his darshan to Kardama Muni, he was so his heart was so melted with the compassion that he is feeling for Kardama Muni, with the love that he is feeling for Kardama Muni. He actually, out of ecstasy, he shed tears. And some of those tears actually mixed with the waters of the lake. So that is why this lake, which was just the water of river Saraswati, which is also exalted, but now it was personally mixed with the tears. So that is why the Sarovar became Bindu Sarovar. So that happened only after the Supreme Lord appeared. So that is why after he left, now the lake has become called as Bindu Sarovar. Earlier it was not called Bindu Sarovar. Only after the Lord came, spoke to Kardama Muni, shed tears, and when he left, now the lake is Bindu Sarovar. That's why this is being described after the Supreme Lord has gone back. And now that Swayambhu, Manu, Shatarupa, Devahuti, and others are entering the scenario. So here this particular Bindu Sarovar and its surroundings are very nicely described in these few verses. What kind of pious trees are there, which are rich in flowers, fruits of all seasons, which give shelter to various creepers, and also they have such a sweet sounding birds and humming bees, which are intoxicated because of the honey that they are taking from various flowers. And there are various peacocks and various cuckoos which are making sweet sounds. And the Bindu Sarovar was adorned by various flowering trees. So like Kadamba, Champaka, and Bakula, and Kunda, and Mandara. So all these are very, very fragrant flowers. And because of these flower-bearing trees, the whole atmosphere was filled with pleasing smell. And because of the birds, the whole atmosphere was filled with pleasing sounds. So just imagine, it's a place which is such spiritually potent, and also it is very such an externally speaking in a mode of transcendence or transcendental goodness, that it has such sweet smelling flowers and sweet sounds from made by the birds. So in this serene atmosphere he's trying to meditate. So its shores were also surrounded by various kinds of animals and swans and so many other uh, flowers in the sarovar itself, like lotuses were filled in the lake itself. And in this way, when the sarovar is being described, next Maitreya Rishi explains how Kardama from verses 50 to 56 glorifies Manu, because Manu is not an ordinary person. He is the king of the whole Bhumandala, and he is here appearing, and Kardamuni knows who he is, so he is glorifying, because it's a process of reception, receiving a great guest, a very highly respected guest, that he, Kardama Muni, offers prayers and glorification of this great king Swayambhu Manu. So entering the ashram, Swayambhu Manu comes and he sees, Kardama Muni sees that this great personality is entering his ashram precincts, and he actually offers his he was that time offering oblations, he were actually performing sacrifices. And that's when Kardama Muni along with others are entering his ashram precincts. And at that time, how was Kardama looking like? Kardama's body was shining. Mhm. I again missed a section, I'm sorry. So he was entering the Swayambhu Manu is entering the precincts of Kardama Muni's ashram, and Kardama Muni is described here as his body was shining. Even though he was performing austerities, he was not looking emaciated because of receiving the Lord's affectionate glances. His nourishment was the Lord's glance. Just because Lord glanced at him, he was looking very, very uh, healthy. And hearing the nectar flowing from the mouth of the Supreme Lord, the lotus mouth of the Supreme Lord, he was fully nourished. And he had such beautiful eyes. And he appeared, even though he was like, not like, he was appearing like an unpolished gem, because he wasn't wearing very costly clothes or ornaments or anything like that. So seeing that, Manu was actually, Manu, the Swayambhu Manu, who's the great king, he actually bows down to Kardama Muni, and Kardama Muni receives him with due honor. It's so here as a person who's coming, who's so great, and he's coming to give offer his daughter in marriage, and still he actually offers obeisances. And Kardama Muni receives him, and Manu sits and remembers the Lord's words that was spoken to him. And remembering those words, he starts addressing Kardama. So from verse 50 to 56, Kardama is glorifying the great king Manu. So here he's saying how Manu, Swayambhu Manu is actually the protective energy of the Supreme Lord. He is the one who protects the people of this world. So he is the protective energy of the Lord, because he travels and actually controls the whole kingdom, and he kills the non like impious people. And he says even demigods are considered your forms. So Vishnu Chakravarti writes, Manu is compared to different demigods because of exhibiting following qualities of the demigods. Like he was majestic like sun, he was invincible like fire, he was lording over like Indra. He can enter anywhere that he wants like Vayu, and he can punish the sinful like Yama, and he can protect the righteous like Dharma, and he can be actually he have processes deep and hidden treasure like Varuna. So in this way he is considered as, he can assume any form of the demigods, basically have all those powers that the demigods exhibit. And he offers his obeisances, and he says, you you are like sun, that how as the sun travels the whole planet, and that is the reason that there is life in this planet. Similarly, if you want to this planet earth like the sun with your chariot and your army, then the religious principles will be destroyed. There will be no light, there will only be darkness. So, in this way, the irreligion might release, and the unrighteous may take advantage of righteous people. And in this way, you, by your travel and your control and administration, you actually protect the world. And he says, in spite of all this, in spite of being so busy and having uh, such valuable contributions that you have to make to this world, you have taken your time out to come here. So may I know what actually brings you here, even though the Lord has already told him. So whatever it may be, we shall carry it out without reservation. So we can see it as funny also, that he says he knows that he has come to give offer his daughter. So he's saying, oh, whatever it may be, we shall carry it out without reservation. So in the next chapter, Kardama Muni will be offered Devahuti by Swayambhu Manu and Shatarupa in marriage. So we will see that next week. So grateful for all of you for joining. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Chukapatarugasya Kapasindubhyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.